Hello and welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, powered by Harper's Tree and Stump Removal. If you have any tree trimming, tree removal, or stump removal needs, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal has you covered. They can also haul rock or sand. They can do driveway work and can now even do horizontal grinding of large wood debris piles. Give Keith a call at 229-314-2048 or at 229-938-2412. Harper's Tree and Stump Removal is proud to be the premier sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
We are live at the Roman Oven Pizzeria here in Americus, and we encourage you to come by and be a part of our show today. Have a good supper with us, and let's talk a little bit of high school football. I'm your host, Tim Estes. As always, I'm glad to be joined by our co-host, Scott Westbrook. Last week was a big week of high school football in our area. The Schley County Wildcats defeated the Taylor County Vikings by the score of 45-6. The Sumter County Panthers shut out Dodge County's Indians by a score of 17-0. And Southland Academy fell to the Brookwood School 21-7. Scott, as our area gets ready for week 10 of the high school football season, it's a very important week for all of our area teams. We've got one of our teams that's fighting for its playoff life, another team that needs one win out of their last three to secure a playoff spot. And then, of course, this week we've got a number 1 versus number 2 matchup.
I'm telling you, Tim, it is wide open right now. This week is an urgent game for every single team in our area for different reasons, and we'll cover that tonight. But this is a great week to go out and catch a high school football game.
Before we get into the breakdown of each of these 3 area schools, we have a special guest with us tonight. We want to bring in Drew Mohan from up at Georgia Tech. Drew has kind of made a name for himself in the prognostication world. He is a student, a biomedical engineering student over at Georgia Tech. Drew, good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Drew, we got to hear you on several podcasts over the last few weeks. I know you have built a relationship with Carson Westbrook, Scott's son, and we've been really impressed with the work that you're doing. Tell our audience, first of all, just a little bit about you and how you got into this.
Well, as you mentioned, I am a third-year Georgia Tech student studying biomedical engineering. I went to high school up in Gwinnett County at North Gwinnett High School, and I'm actually part of the marching band. So at Georgia Tech and throughout high school, going to several games, probably more than 100 at this point in total. At that point, you can't really stay away from the game, right? So you're always so involved in it. You tend to pick up on the little details. And after a while, during my senior year, which was COVID, my friends told me to take all the knowledge that I had and put it into a public database per se, which would be Instagram, and kind of talk about it and give my opinions on it. And, what started as a side hobby to pastime during COVID has now grown to over 20,000 followers and a real thing I can bank on for the future.
That's amazing. And I got to watch a podcast you did last week, and I know you do some written work too with ITG Next, which is a really good, really popular platform. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the work with ITG actually started 2 years ago. So when I was a first year in college, I was already starting to write for them. And, it's not a full-time thing, obviously, as a student. So it's something I do over the weekends per se. And I just love writing or talking about sports. So I always love going on to podcasts, big or small. It doesn't really matter to me because at the end of the day, it's an opportunity to talk more football. And that's something I love to do.
Scott, a Georgia Tech student.
Drew, I'm gonna confess some things. I'm a little starstruck right now because really, if it wasn't for your site, I probably you and Britney Spears, obviously, I would never get on Instagram, but your site is top shelf. It's really one of my favorite. And I know you're a biomedical engineer. At least you chose an easy major at Georgia Tech.
Correct.
But we don't. my only complaint about your site is you don't put enough content up. But I understand that being a student that I enjoy reading, and what I like, and we're going to say it several times, but it's GAHS, Georgia High School Football, GAHS football
It's
on
a tongue
Instagram.
twister.
It is. That's okay. We'll get it out. But I have told several of my friends this week about you going on, and they're like, well, I don't have Instagram. And this is literally what I said to them. I said, if for no other reason to get an Instagram, follow him. Follow him if you like high school football, because what I like about it is people will debate you and you don't get emotionally involved. You just sit there and spit facts out at them and say, look, this is the basis. And that's why I was so excited to get you on here, because you don't just sit there and shoot from the hip. Obviously, with the career you've chosen and the school you've chosen, you have an analytical mind, and that's exactly the way you approach this. And I appreciate that, and I enjoy your site. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you for the compliments. I mean, I think fact-based is one of the biggest things I've been a part of since or has been a big part of what I do since high school. Because a lot of times, I do have and that doesn't take anything away. I still have the very emotional side. I'll come back from a GT game where we lose to Bowling Green or beat Miami, and I'll come back and I'll overreact and say, we should have done this so much better. We should have done this when the stats don't back it up. It's still a part of me. But the thing is, when it comes to neutral analysis like this, like for example, there's a team in Gwinnett County called Peachtree Ridge. They're undefeated this year, which is crazy for their standards. And they just beat my alumnus, North Gwinnett. Now they're celebrating it, and that's amazing. They should, but they shouldn't be ranked yet, even though they're undefeated. So it's kind of like, how do you take factual information, which you know to be true? It's just because you're undefeated doesn't mean you deserve to be ranked. And how do you convey that to an audience that is coming off, is high off a win over a heated rival in that city? So there's a lot of different ways to convey it. Depends on the audience, depends on who you're talking to. Obviously, you wouldn't communicate with an 8th grader the same way you would communicate with the head coach of Peachtree Ridge. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And with regard to content, I have so many ideas that I would love to put out for content. But at the end of the day, I just don't have the time to do it. So I try to stick to a rigid Monday, Wednesday, Friday type schedule-ish.
Leave them wanting more, Drew. That's okay, man. You do a spectacular job. I think you're getting in on the ground floor of something that is just. I think you're going to do well with your biomedical engineering career, with this hobby on the side. I mean, Tim, when we were your age, you would have we could see as many college games on a weekend as you high school games on ESPN now. Back in our day, you'd maybe see 2 or 3 college games on a weekend. Well, you see that many high school now. So if that's any predictor for what's in the future, you're doing the ground floor and got some great followers and some great content, I think you're going to be fine with a profitable little side hustle too. Okay.
Thank you.
Drew, what we hope is that you'll also share this with your followers. This is the first year of the Integrity Sports Podcast, and of course, we focus naturally on the 3 schools in our Southwest Georgia area: Southland Academy, Sumter County High, and Schley County High School. But we also try to touch on a few other area schools, and that's going to lead me into why we had you on tonight. We've got a big matchup in our area this weekend. Number 1, Schley County in Class A Division II takes on what some polls say are number 2 Manchester, other polls say number 3 Manchester. What do you know about this matchup?
Well, this is one I've had circled in this classification as the game of the year since the last season finished. And I think one thing I noted about this Manchester team is, for example, if you look at the AJC's rankings, they had Manchester entering the season 5th or 6th. I was higher on Manchester. I had them entering 2nd. Now, they've not really moved from that spot because, well, they've been playing like the 2nd-ranked team. But Schley County's always been number 1. And that's because of how they played last year. They returned so much talent and mostly production. Jay at QB, Carson at receiver. Of course, you've got Zayden Walker. Jalewis Solomon. It's loaded. For an 82 team, the talent on that team is loaded. But you can't count out Manchester as well. Justice Terry on defense. They had 2 rushers from last year returning who rushed for 1,000 yards each. So this is a very dangerous team. But when it comes down to it, I think Schley County's playing on a different level per se. They use the passing game more effectively than any other team in that classification. We saw it last year. Jay passed for, I think it was 3,300 yards, and no other team had half of that. Now, I think when you look at it this year, I'm not going to say they revolutionized the game or anything because it's too early for that. But a lot of smaller schools tend to lean on rushing the football, and naturally, because it's hard to find great passers at smaller schools that are public. But more schools like Turner County are stepping into that realm of, hey, we have to pass the ball if we're going to compete. Manchester still sticks to more of the rush-based approach, and that's not a bad thing. With the way they're playing, it's definitely not a bad thing. But when it comes down to it, I think Schley County is more capable of scoring the football. I could see maybe a 1 or even 2 score win by Schley County as they kind of put the game away in the first half, and Manchester has to kind of claw back. But that's tougher to do when you're dead set on running the football.
Drew, as I got to looking at numbers this week between these two teams, I noticed that Manchester only has about 380 yards passing on the season. They do have 1,800 yards rushing already, so we know they can rush the football. When you look at Schley County's defense and all the prospects that are on that front line, and then probably the best middle linebacker in Class A Division II in Jack Clark, and then you've got South Carolina commit Jalewis Solomon in the backfield, Georgia High School's interception leader Carson Westbrook on the other side. This Schley County defense will be by far the toughest that Manchester's had to face.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Manchester, their offense isn't as top and explosive as we talked about because of the lack of passing yards. And I liked you bringing up Jack Clark. It goes really unnoticed about. There's so many playmakers on that Schley County defense that don't get talked about just because you have Jalewis Solomon and Zayden Walker there. And I think the mindset for Schley going into this game is you cannot think that you're 5 stars or you're 4 stars. You have to go play like everybody's sleeping on you, like everybody's overlooking you. Because at the end of the day, Manchester already has that approach. They know coming into this game that they're not favored to win. If you can match that attitude from the football aspect of it, despite having all that talent, you're going to have a very successful team. I think Schley County did a great job of that last year. I had Schley as a top 5 team entering the season last year, and they more than proved it. For most of the year, it was Schley 1, Bowden 2. Heck, I mean, going into last season's preseason playoff prediction that I did before the season started, I picked Schley and Bowden to meet in the state championship, and there they were. So they played with the attitude that I expected, but I'm seeing that same kind of improvement year to year that Schley had in Manchester as well. They're playing with their hair on fire as well. So for Schley County to win this game, they need to get off to a fast start, and they need to play like they are the underdog, even though they aren't.
And let's give the guy you mentioned a lot of credit, Justice Terry, the Georgia commit, very, very legit.
He's a freak of nature on defense. I mean, you watch any film of him, it just looks like 2 defensive linemen combined going up against 1 offensive lineman. It's not fair. It's very hard to block. And in the run game, he's a menace. He can completely close out the A gap if he wants to, or the B gap if he chooses to, wherever he lines up, even at edge rusher. So that ball has come out of Jay's hands extremely fast. And luckily for a team that passes the ball well, they know exactly how to do that.
Let me tell you, think about this. Tomorrow night, when we played Macon County a 1 versus 2, we estimated we had over 3,000 people there.
Wow.
Macon and Schley are right next to each other. This tomorrow night is, for all intents and purposes, it's going to be the region championship game. But how often do you, with a single A team, or whether it be D1, D2, a 2A team, or even a 3A team, do you have a 4-star and 2 5-stars? I mean, I think Justice Terry's a 5-star, right?
He was a 4-star going in. I don't know if
he should be close.
I mean, how often do you get to go to a football game with that many stars in the lower classifications? It's extremely rare. And for both teams to be playing for a region championship, I mean, what better place to put $10 than to go to a high school football game tomorrow night?
Oh, guaranteed. I mean, even when I was in high school, you might know a little guy named Josh Downs who's in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So Josh Downs was 1 year. He's just 1 year older than me. So he was a grade above me. So I got to watch him for 3 years. And I got into these games for free. And I would have paid $7 to go watch just him play, not even the whole team. So $10 to go watch a game this star-studded in like public school football, not private school football, because private school football, you can have like Aaron Philo of Prince Avenue. He's a 3-star, but to have a public school, two public schools with this much talent. I don't know if I can remember a time since, the dynasties of old with Dublin and all, where we've had this kind of game. I think, in my opinion, this might be one of the biggest regular season games Schley and Manchester's ever, or each team individually has ever played.
Right.
Drew, before we let you go, from what I'm hearing, you're actually calling Schley County the winner tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes. My official score prediction was 30-16.
And I know we haven't talked much about the Sumter County matchup with Fitzgerald or what they've got left to go in the season, but you follow Georgia high school football pretty close. Talk just a little bit about Sumter County and Fitzgerald tomorrow and the turnaround that Will Rogers has made at Sumter County.
It's been incredible. I mean, this is a team coming off 3 straight 1-win seasons. And now they don't have an easy schedule that they're getting 4 or 5 wins on. They're beating good teams here. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Marion, which is a great win. They beat Crisp County. They beat Northside. So these are good wins. However, you're going up against a juggernaut in Fitzgerald. That's the known fact here. And this Fitzgerald team, people looked at them early in the season, and even the polls did. If you look at the polls, they didn't think Fitzgerald was all that after they lost to Northeast and they lost to Madison County from Florida. I'm not too quick to say they're gone. A lot of polls have them 7th or 8th. They're still 3rd for me. Madison County is a good team. Northeast is a good team. So I think when it comes down to it, Fitzgerald should be about 2 touchdown favorites. I think they are actually. I could see Sumter County kind of covering that spread, if you say. But I would not be surprised if Fitzgerald won by 21 or 24 too. So it's a tremendous job what Will Rogers has done at Sumter County. I'm going to have to go with Fitzgerald in this one. And I don't know. I think Sumter County puts up 14-ish and Fitzgerald wins by about 17-ish.
Drew, it's been great to have you on. I hope we can get you back on when the playoffs begin. It would be really interesting to hear your takes on all these playoff matchups. Before we let you go, tell folks how they can find you.
It's pretty simple. So if you open up your Instagram app, my only account is at GAHS Football. It's quite a tongue twister if you try saying it quickly, but it stands for Georgia High School Football. That's pretty much the only place you can find me. I haven't expanded to Twitter, haven't had the time. I made my own website once when I was bored, but that's not updated. It's updated to 2021 stats, and you don't want that. So if you ever need to reach out to me through my Instagram account. I try to reply to absolutely everybody I can.
Mohan, thank you for joining us.
Drew, I don't see how you do it, buddy. I don't see how you juggle Georgia Tech with biomedical engineering. And because you were so responsive when we requested that you come on, and we were, like I said, we were just tickled to death to have you on. But keep on. And I tell you, this is going to end up being a pretty good side hustle for you as this grows in high school football. One day, probably, in your professional career, will eventually get as big as college football.
I think, the goal is kind of just take this, combine it with biomedical engineering in some way to get sports science maybe and pursue a path in sports science. So it's kind of testing the water, seeing what works at this point in my career.
That's Drew Mohan. Follow him on his Instagram. Drew, thanks again for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Drew. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So as we get to Sumter County, they'll be the first team we talk about. They defeated Dodge County last week, Scott, 17-0. They'll be at Fitzgerald this week. Sumter County currently at 4-3. Fitzgerald is at 5-2. Scott, you and I called this one last week. We felt like Sumter County would take down the Dodge County.
We did. We had a feeling that Sumter County was on a roll. This was a team they could take. One of the things I love about Sumter County is they're winning games right now that we had L's for them at the beginning of the season.
That's right.
And that right there is when a team has turned the corner, when they start winning games that they're not supposed to win. And I mean, even though we felt like they would in the season, probably, a week or, even after the first or second game, we would have probably still listed this as an L, but they came back and they win and they're on a roll and they're going to continue to do well, I believe.
Sumter County Panthers head down to Fitzgerald. The Fitzgerald Purple Hurricanes 5-2, but both of their losses to very good teams, very strong teams. Northeast Macon and Madison, Florida. Fitzgerald's currently the number 7 ranked team in Class AA. Scott, I don't want to get into predictions yet, but if you would have told Sumter County at the start of the season that they would be 4-3 right now and only need to win 1 out of their last 3 to secure a playoff spot, I think they would have gladly taken it.
That most assuredly, like I said, in the past few weeks, I've said that Sumter County is playing with house money, just exactly like the Colorado Buffaloes are. Regardless of what happens the rest of the season, they've improved significantly over last year, and that right there, in and of itself, is something to be celebrated. The fact that they have the possibility and a very real possibility to make the playoffs with this quick of a turnaround is just astronomical.
And let's just say that they dropped this week, which is what's predicted. But then they beat Worth County and they beat Jeff Davis. They're not only in the playoffs, they're in as the 3 seed, not the 4 seed.
Right.
We want to wish the best of luck to Will Rogers. We'll get to the predictions a little later. Today's show is brought to you in part by Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Americus. You can reach Marty at 928-3686 or get in touch with any of his staff to discuss your insurance needs. Marty also can do the discount double check to make sure you're receiving all of the savings that you are entitled to. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, proud to be a sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. Southland Academy dropped a 21-7 loss to Brookwood. They travel this week down to Valdosta to take on Valwood. 21-7 the 4 last week. Southland's now 2-5. Valwood is 5-1. This will be a tough one.
It's a tough hill to climb. This one right here reminds me a lot of the what Sumter County had to face early in the season when they played Houston County, and they had to travel to Houston County and face. But if you remember, Sumter County stayed with them for a while. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Sumter County to really to win this game. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a tough hill to climb at this point. One of the silver linings from last week is that they did at least keep Brookwood away from those PlayStation type football numbers they were putting up.
They threw it 66 times.
Oh, and had just crazy yard. Like I don't remember, but just a crazy amount of yards, and so it had the makings of being because they had just come off a 50-50 game where each team had scored 50 points, but Southland did rein that offense in a little bit and held them to a reasonable number.
Had a rough night down in Thomasville, not just because of the score, Scott. They stepped on their own toes a lot with a lot of penalties and mistakes during the ball game. The first mistake happened just 2 minutes into the game when the Raiders fumbled and Brookwood to get a scoop and score. It was 70 yards for a scoop and score, and they were up 7-0 really quickly. Southland quarterback Banks Simmons never let it bother him, however, as he orchestrated a 60-yard, 12-play drive, and they would cap that off with calling his own number and running it into the end zone. So a quarterback keeper for the touchdown. Cooper Boren's PAT was good, and Southland was right back in it at 7-7. But the guy that you and I talked about a lot last week, quarterback Raj Waldron, took over from that point on. He had another outstanding game. Just before halftime, Waldron found Seth Boggs on an 18-yard touchdown strike, and PAT was no good. Brookwood led 13-7. On 2 separate occasions, the Raiders would get into the red zone, but they would turn the ball over on downs. Late in the contest, Waldron would once again find Boggs. This time, it was an insurance touchdown, and they elected to go for 2, and they got it. So they were up 21-7, which would be the final score. Banks Simmons had one of his better games on the year. Banks was 11 for 23 for 125 yards passing. The Raiders as a team had 167 yards on the ground, so a good balanced attack. I think a guy kind of came out this week, the youngster Cade Futch, ran the football really, really well for the Raiders this week. He had 88 yards on the ground. But the dagger, however, was that Southland had 12 penalties on the night for 110 yards.
That's tough to overcome at any classification, at any level.
Scott, this week, the Raiders take on Coach Brad Wells, Bellwood Valiants. They lead the region right now. They have an outstanding 52-13 win over previously undefeated Terrell Academy. So it looks like Bellwood definitely is at the top of that region.
They are, and they're a 36-point favorite going into this game. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, I feel quite certain Valwood's going to come in overconfident. We hope complacent, and we hope that you know, they like Drew said. I'm hoping Southland plays like their hair's on fire, and you know, punches them in the mouth and catches them off guard a little bit.
And Scott, looking at the GIAA website today, the GIAA Class AAA has 12 schools. The top 10 ranked schools will get into the GIAA playoffs. Southland currently is at number 8.
Mm-hmm.
If they can win 2 out of their last 3 ball games, they should secure a playoff spot there in the GIAA. So, want to wish Rod Murray and the Southland Academy Raiders the best. Another of our sponsors is One Digital. They are a steward of business growth and personal development. Their insurance, financial services, and HR platforms provide personalized, tech-enabled solutions for a contemporary work-life experience. One Digital resolves real problems for your business and your employees by fusing together customized solutions that address employee benefits, HR, and financial services. It's everything all in one. It's One Digital. You can contact Will Peterson at 229-347-6289. I think that's right, isn't it?
229-347-6289.
Yeah. One Digital is proud to be a sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. That gets us down to Schley County. They had a big 45-6 win over Taylor County to put the Schley County Wildcats still undefeated, still ranked number 1 in Class A-B-2. They'll take on Manchester and Scott. The polls that I look at on Georgia High School Football Daily, most of those have Manchester as the number 2 team. Some of them have them 3 behind Greene County. Regardless, they're really good.
Well, the one I look at, and you cited it on Georgia High School Football Daily, I look at the composite poll where they take all the polls together, they give a point, and then they add them all together. In that poll, it's got Schley number 1, and then it's got a 3-way tie for second. It's got Manchester, Greene County, and I think Clinch. I think are the 3-way is the 3-way tie. And so, as far as I'm concerned, tomorrow night is another 1 versus 2.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can sit there and cite this poll, that poll, but when you take all the polls that everybody looks at and talks about, and I hope Drew's poll is eventually included in that mix because, like he said, and he won't toot his own horn, but I'm going to toot it for him. He does the ones like last year. He was the one that called Schley and Bowden early in the season. Earlier,
if you follow his success through all classifications, he's 90% accurate.
He's on. I mean, I tell you what, if he may be in Vegas. Who knows? Medical engineer. He may make it with people taking his analytical breakdown of the teams and figuring out who he thinks is going to win.
And it was all Schley County last week as the Wildcats throttled Taylor County. On Schley County's first offensive play of the game, sophomore Jeremiah Wright went 58 yards for a touchdown. The PAT.
Jeremiah Rogers.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Jeremiah Rogers went 58 yards for a touchdown. The PAT by Miguel was good. It was 7-0. But Scott, Taylor County came right back. They got behind our defensive backs on a long pass, got it down in the red zone, and shortly after that, scored their own touchdown as DJ Jenkins took it in from the 3-yard line. Their extra point was no good, and Sumter 7-6. That would be the only scoring of the night for the Vikings. The Wildcats defense, led by Trenton Stubbs and Wyatt Halstead up front, by Jack Clark and Ethan Sellers on that second line, and Brody Smith. I thought Brody Smith had one of his better games at the linebacker spot. And then, of course, our defensive back just completely shut down the pass that they tried to do. Tyrese Cook, who's really come on this year, I think he's is he a senior, Scott, Tyrese?
I think so. I think he is. Yeah.
Carson Westbrook and Jalua Solomon all back there just completely shut the pass down. Taylor County couldn't muster any scores. On offense, the guy that really broke out, I thought last week, Scott, was KB Aldridge. He had 3 rushing touchdowns.
He is getting more and more comfortable in that position as running back. And, I mean, I think his breakout game, and along with the one you cited at Taylor, I think it was at Bleckley County. I think he gained a lot of confidence and really kind of grew into that position and liked it. And now he's got his foot on the gas and really showing us what he can do.
It was 24-6 at halftime, and then in the second half, Zayden Walker would show why he's a 5-star by all rating services. He had several rushing touchdowns in the second half, Scott. I really thought after about midway through the second quarter, Schley had put their stamp.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, even though Taylor County and Cameron Lawhorn and they were passing the ball a good bit more than I thought they would. But Cameron actually he threw some very impressive passes. Had we not had the strong defensive backfield that we had and some key drops by some Taylor County receivers, the score might have been a little different. But Cameron, I mean, when he threw the pass in there, he dropped it right in the gizzard a couple of times. So those, so you can't have any complaints about him if you're a Taylor County fan.
After the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, Cameron, you got beat up pretty good tonight. Are you going to be okay? Man, he's a tough kid.
He is.
He said, Coach, I'll be fine.
Oh yeah.
Give me a day or two, and I'm going to be fine. I'll be back. And they've got a big matchup this week.
Mm-hmm.
This week, Manchester comes to town. Scott, Manchester sports a 4-star or a 5-star by some rating services. Justice Terry. We saw him last year at their place. He was incredible. He's a giant.
When he took that picture of himself, or somebody took a picture of him when he was in the 8th grade, it blew up the internet. So much so that I'm a member of a sports page, a sports site that's mainly made up of Green Bay Packer fans. It's really kind of odd. I mean, how I got in there on Facebook but all these Green Bay Packer fans tagged me when that picture and said, "Hey Scott, do you know about this kid in Georgia?" I said, "Yeah, he's in our region, but I wouldn't trade a couple of our players for him." Yeah. But he's done a phenomenal job and will continue to. We've got to really have something in the cupboard for him, or it's gonna be a long night for us.
Here's what you need to expect. Manchester has 1,800 yards on the ground, only 306 yards passing. They're going to try to run the football. That's their bread and butter. So our defensive front and our linebacker Scott are going to be key tomorrow.
They are. You don't want your defensive backs to have to make the tackles on a lot of those guys that Manchester will be running the ball tomorrow night.
So All South Appraisals is your trusted partner in appraising rural property in our area. All South Appraisals can handle all types of property, agricultural, commercial, or residential, from vast farmlands to that charming country home. They specialize in rural properties that define the heart and soul of our community. Their commitment to accuracy and dedication to understanding the unique nuances of rural properties is what sets them apart. All South Appraisals can be reached at
478-837-3818.
Again, that's All South Appraisals,
478-837-3818.
Other games, Scott, in our area this week, Macon County, they're at 5-2. They'll be at Chatco. Chatco still has 0-7.
Macon County, 42-point favorite. This is going to be a tune-up game for Macon County as they prepare to close their season out.
Macon County, a really good football team. We've seen them not just when they played Schley. You saw them against Clinch County.
Mm-hmm.
They're solid.
Yes.
Marion County, this is another interesting matchup. Marion County, at 4-3, is going to take on Taylor County at 5-2. let me say this before we get into your predictions. Macon County lost a game earlier in the season that I don't think anybody expected.
Against Greenville.
Against Greenville. Otherwise, they would be 5-2.
Right.
Macon County now at 5-2. These two teams look pretty evenly matched.
This is as big a game is for Manchester and Schley tomorrow night. This is equally as big for Taylor and Marion because the winner of this one probably has a spot in the playoffs.
That's right.
And it's going to be. You look at Maxwell's point spread; it's at 0. It's a pick'em game. I think it's senior night in Taylor County. They're playing in Butler. I got to go with Taylor County just because of that.
I think I've got to go with Marion in this one. Marion did stump their toe earlier in the season, but I'm going to go with Marion County. Chris County now at 4-4 takes on Columbus High School at 1-7. My friend JoJo Wright from JoJo Knows Sports assures me that we'll get a Chris County win this week, so I'm going to have to go with it.
42-point spread. I got to agree with him on that.
Lee County, Lee is 6-1. They'll travel to Warner Robins to take on North Side of Warner Robins. North Side having a little bit of a down year this year. They're at 3.
I think that it's a 27-point spread. Lee County's obviously strong. Northside is still trying to get things back on track. They got a new coach who's doing a great job from what I hear. And I think that that Northside really at 3-4 is probably better than most people would have thought this year. Really, I mean, I think they've had some personnel changes in with their starting lineup, but I think I mean, Lee County. I mean, they're the pinnacle. They're one of the top teams in that classification. It's going to be tough for Northside to overcome that. 27-point spread on that one.
Deerfield-Windsor, they're going to be open this week. Scott, I think they went into their game last week really feeling confident. They were facing Eric Soliday's Tiffany Panthers. Tiffany was 0-5-1, but Eric Soliday found a way to win it. So Deerfield really down and probably needing this right.
Right.
It's time for the Booger Bottom Wrap-Up Show, brought to you by the Booger Bottom Yacht Club. They've been voted numerous times as the best burger in Sumter County. They are located on the banks of Lake Blackshear, just off Lamar Road. Go by and see the Sue, Rick, Russ, Renee, or any of their fine staff, and let Booger Bottom wrap you up with the best burger in Sumter County. Going to start, Scott, with Southland at 2-5, traveling about.
I'm going to do Southland a favor here. I'm going to pick Valwood like I picked Taylor County earlier in the year, and I'm going to let Southland surprise me.
I'm going to have to go with Brad Wells and the Valwood Falcons as well. They look like they are gearing up for a state championship run. I do think that Southland will play well. I think Southland will gear up and get 2 wins, close out the season, and get in the playoffs. You and I both know Rob Murray. We know Mike Shadows. We know that Coach Willis got an incredible staff over there. They are down right now as far as the talent scale goes. But Scott, I've just got to think these guys understand what it takes to get in the playoffs. They know that they're building for the next few years. I've got a lot of confidence that they'll have this program moving in the right direction, just not this week.
Well, and like you said, I think I'm like you. I think they're going to get in the playoffs, and I think those coaches and the players need to realize, look, win these last ones, win these last two out of the last 3, get in the playoffs, hit the reset button, and see what happens.
We're both picking Valwood to win this week. Sumter County at 4-3, they travel down to Fitzgerald at 5-2.
16-point favorite Fitzgerald is on this game. They're playing in Fitzgerald. I'm torn, but I'm going to have to pick Fitzgerald this time. Just simply, but I believe it's going to be close at halftime. And if it's close at halftime, I believe in Will Rogers. I believe he's going to keep those kids motivated and fired up. But Fitzgerald is just used to winning. They're just used to it. When you go to a school like that and you play a team that's used to winning, it's tough to get over that hump.
I agree with you. I'm going to go with Fitzgerald world in this one as well. But much like Southland, Scott, I think Worth County and Jeff Davis, the final two games for the Panthers, will be winnable games for Sumter County, and I think they're going to end the season on a 2-game win streak there. Schley County at 7-0 host Manchester 6-1. This is number 1 versus number 2 for the 3rd time this year at Schley County. Scott, what do you think?
Schley County's coming in as a 12-point favorite. I think that's crazy generous, especially as strong as Manchester's been. I think Manchester is going to come in. They're going to be confident. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder. Schley County is going to have to match that intensity, or they're going to go into halftime probably with their tail tucked between their legs. I mean, Schley County is going to have to step up and play the game that they're capable of playing, that we saw them play against Macon County, that we saw them play against Early County, and that we saw them go toe-to-toe with Bleckley County. If they do that, that 12-point spread is realistic.
I think Drew hit the nail on the head. Drew had picked early in the season that Manchester would beat Schley.
Oh, yeah.
He's had a chance now to reevaluate and look at actual statistical data.
Mm-hmm.
I did that this week as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think Schley County is playing the best Class A Division II opponent that they could possibly play. I think Manchester's a legit number 2, but I think Schley County is a legit number 1, and I think they're going to win by 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
So, want to check in on the live chat. Want to thank those that have been visiting with us. Let's see who we got here, Scott. Is that Kerry Claiborne? I think it is. It's a great segment. I think he's talking about that with Drew. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you for checking in with us. Boy, we hear y'all had a good one over at Buford this past week with Mill Creek. Hate it didn't come out that way that you wanted, but boy, y'all got a good thing going up there. And then Scott, looks like Doug Hatch is checking in all the way from Illinois once again. Glad to have you, Doug. Thank you for checking in with us again. Hope you'll continue to watch each week. Scott, week 10, that's our show for the night, but I'd like to get your thoughts, first of all, on what Drew had to say, and then your final thoughts on this.
Like I said, I was tickled to death when I reached out to Drew this week, and he said he'd come on the show. I know he is a busy student, but I'm telling y'all, if you don't have an Instagram account, get one just to follow him and Britney Spears, obviously. But also, if you do have one, follow him. I know Carson. What got me turned on to is Carson was sharing a lot of his stuff on his story, and I said, well, let me see what this GHS football. And I read a lot of the comments and read a lot of the how he correspond with the fans, and he just, he does. You can tell he doesn't get rattled when a hypersensitive fan gets on there and says, You're not giving us the respect we deserve, and he just spits numbers back at them and spits facts back at them, and then it diffuses the argument. It really does, and so I enjoy reading that because he's wise beyond his years.
He really is. Drew, if you're still watching, certainly thank you for coming on tonight. It was a pleasure, and we certainly look to get you back on for the playoffs. We want to thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal, Marty McDonald, State Farm Insurance, All South Appraisals, One Digital Solutions, and Booker Bottom. Of course, it's always a pleasure to be here at the Roman Oven. And Scott, I think we had the biggest crowd tonight. A bunch of folks stopping by to wave as they were either coming in or going out. We want you to come by and eat with us on Thursday. Stop in and say hello to us. I did see Vincent Kearse came in tonight. I still haven't been able to get him in the room and get him on camera, but we're going to get him eventually.
We got him to the edge. He came all the way to the door.
But again, we want to thank you for watching this. 1,600 people watched this past week. Please like and share this on Facebook. Go to our YouTube page, Integrity Sports Podcast, and hit the subscribe button. We're also available on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and several other podcast platforms. For my good friend, Scott Westbrook, for Drew Mohan, and we thank you for being with us. I'm Tim Estes. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.